The October wind cuts through Boston like a blade, carrying with it the scent of dying leaves and something sharper, the metallic taste of approaching conflict. I stand on the cobblestone steps of the Beacon Hill townhouse that has housed 4 generations of Harrington family gatherings, my fingers wrapped around a coffee cup that stopped warming my hands 20 minutes ago. The burgundy door with its polished brass knocker gleams like a shield, and behind it, I can already hear the familiar symphony of clinking silverware and carefully modulated laughter. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Victoria Harrington Blake, though most people in that house still call me Vicky, as if the diminutive could somehow contain the woman I've become within the boundaries of the girl they remember. The morning sun slants through the elm trees, casting long shadows across Marlborough Street, each stripe of light and darkness a reminder of how this family has always operated. Brilliant spotlights for some, deep shadows for others. I adjust the collar of my navy blazer, a habit I picked up somewhere between boardrooms and briefing rooms, though my family would never guess the latter. The fabric feels foreign against my skin today, too formal for the woman who usually moves through the world in clothes that don't announce themselves. But today is different. Today is the annual Harrington Foundation Board meeting, followed by what my mother calls our little family celebration, a gathering that feels more like a performance review disguised as brunch. Through the tall windows, I catch glimpses of movement inside. My sister Stephanie's laugh rings out, bright and confident as church bells, followed by the deeper rumble of my father's approval. The sound makes my stomach tighten with an emotion I can't quite name, something between longing and resignation, like hearing a song from a life you almost lived. The townhouse itself seems to lean into the street, its red brick facade weathered but proud, windows gleaming like watchful eyes. Each window frame has been painted the same deep forest green for as long as I can remember, a tradition that speaks to the Harrington commitment to appearances, to maintaining the careful illusion that nothing here ever changes, that we are exactly what we appear to be. I know every room behind those windows, the formal dining room with its mahogany table that seats 14, the library where my grandfather's maritime law books still line the shelves like silent sentinels, the sunroom where my mother holds court with her gardening magazines and charity committee phone calls. These rooms have been the stage for every major moment of my life, and they hold their secrets as carefully as they hold their antiques. The morning air tastes of salt from the harbor, though we're blocks away from the water. It's a phantom taste, the way this city carries the ocean in its bones, the way some families carry their histories, everywhere, inescapable, defining the flavor of everything that follows. I breathe it in and remember being 7 years old, standing at this same door, afraid to go inside because I'd tracked mud on my shoes, and knew it would be one more mark against me in the invisible ledger my family kept. That ledger has grown thick over the years. Every choice that diverged from the Harrington script, every decision that prioritized purpose over prestige, every moment I chose substance over show, all of it carefully cataloged and weighed against the family myth of success. They never said it outright, but the message was clear. Victoria had potential once, but she'd chosen to waste it. A taxi turns onto Marlborough Street, its tires whispering against the damp asphalt, and I watch it disappear around the corner toward Commonwealth Avenue. For a moment, I imagine flagging it down, telling the driver to take me anywhere but here. But my feet remain planted on the steps, my hand still wrapped around the cooling coffee cup, my heart still hoping that maybe this time will be different. The door opens before I can reach for the knocker, and there stands Maria Santos, our housekeeper since I was 12. Her face breaks into a genuine smile, the kind I haven't seen in this house for longer than I care to remember. She's wearing her Sunday best, a navy dress with tiny pearl buttons and sensible shoes that have carried her through 3 decades of Harrington family dramas. "Miss Vicky," she says, taking my empty coffee cup without being asked, her voice warm with an accent that has softened but never disappeared. "Your mother is in the morning room. She's been asking for you." Maria's eyes search my face with the concerned affection of someone who has watched me grow up, who has seen me stumble through adolescence, and emerge into adulthood that confuses my family. She knows things about me that my parents never bothered to ask, secrets whispered in the kitchen during late-night snack raids when I was home from college, dreams shared over cups of her extraordinary hot chocolate. How is she today, I ask, though we both know the question carries more weight than its simple words suggest. Excited, Maria replies, her tone carefully neutral. The whole house is energetic today. I follow her through the foyer, my heels clicking against the black and white marble tiles that have announced the arrival of generations of Harringtons. The sound echoes off the high ceiling, where a crystal chandelier hangs like a frozen firework, each facet catching and fracturing the morning light into tiny rainbows that dance across the walls. The portraits lining the hallway watch our progress with painted eyes that seem to hold judgment in their careful brushstrokes. Great-grandfather Harrington in his naval uniform, his face stern beneath a cap that speaks of different wars and clearer enemies. Grandmother Harrington in her presentation gown, diamonds at her throat like captured stars. My father as a young lawyer, his Harvard law degree framed behind him like a halo. And there, smaller than the others, and hung in a spot where the light doesn't quite reach, a photograph of me at 18, graduating summa cum laude from Boston College. I'm smiling in the photo, but it's the careful smile of someone who has learned to be grateful for scraps of recognition. The frame is silver, expensive, but the placement speaks volumes about where that achievement ranks in the family hierarchy. The morning room sits at the back of the house, its tall windows overlooking the private garden, where my mother grows her prize-winning roses. The room is painted a soft yellow that should feel warm but somehow manages to feel clinical, like sunshine filtered through glass until it loses its heat. Antique furniture arranged with museum precision creates conversation areas that feel more like interview zones. My mother, Patricia Harrington, sits in her usual chair, a Queen Anne wingback that positions her perfectly to command both the room and the view. She's wearing her pearls, of course, and a cashmere sweater set in soft dove gray that probably costs more than most people's monthly salary. Her silver hair is styled in the same elegant bob she's worn for 20 years, not a strand out of place despite the October wind. She looks up when I enter, and her face performs that complex dance of emotions that has become our standard greeting. Genuine love complicated by disappointment, maternal pride undercut by social embarrassment, hope battling with resignation. It's an expression I've learned to read like weather patterns, and today's forecast calls for storms. Victoria darling, she says, rising with the fluid grace of someone who learned deportment at finishing school and never forgot. You look wonderful. That blazer is very professional. The pause before professional carries the weight of everything she cannot say, that she wishes it were a designer dress, that she hopes someday I'll trade whatever mysterious career path I've chosen for something that photographs well in the society pages, that my success means nothing to her if she can't understand or explain it. Thank you, Mother, I reply, accepting her embrace, which smells of Chanel No. 5 and the faint floral scent of her hand cream. You look beautiful, as always. And she does. Patricia Harrington has aged like fine wine, becoming more elegant and intimidating with each passing year. She moves through the world with the confidence of someone who has never doubted her place in it, never questioning whether she deserves the respect she commands. It's a confidence I've always envied and never quite managed to replicate. Your father is in his study, dealing with some foundation business, she says, settling back into her chair and gesturing for me to take the seat across from her. Stephanie should be here any moment. She's bringing someone special. The way she says someone special makes my stomach clench. In the Harrington family code, this means another achievement to celebrate, another medal to polish in the display case of family pride. Stephanie has always been generous with achievements. Her marriage to a Supreme Court clerk, her partnership at a white shoe law firm, her appointment to the Governor's Economic Advisory Committee. Each success is another brick in the wall that separates us. That's wonderful, I manage, settling into a chair that feels like a witness box. I'm looking forward to meeting them. Through the window, I can see the gardener working among my mother's roses, his movements careful and practiced. The roses are dormant now, their bare stems like skeletal fingers reaching toward a gray sky, but come spring they'll bloom in perfect rows of pink and white and deep red. My mother plans her garden like she plans everything else, with precision, patience, and an unwavering belief that beautiful things require constant tending and never surprise you. Victoria, my mother begins, her voice taking on that particular tone that signals a difficult conversation approaching. I hope you'll stay for dinner tonight. The whole family will be here, and it's been so long since we've all been together. The request sounds casual, but I know my mother well enough to hear the subtext. This isn't just an invitation, it's a summons. Whatever celebration Stephanie has planned, whatever announcement is coming, my presence is required not as a participant, but as a witness, as a reminder of what success looks like and what its absence means. Outside, the October wind picks up, rattling the windows and sending the last few leaves spiraling past the glass like golden snow. I watch them fall and think about all the storms I've weathered in places my family will never know, all the battles I've fought in waters they can't imagine. But sitting here in this yellow room, surrounded by the careful beauty of my mother's world, those victories feel as distant and insubstantial as the phantom taste of salt on the wind. Of course, Mother, I say, my voice steady despite the turbulence building in my chest. I wouldn't miss it. And as the words leave my mouth, I realize they're more prophecy than promise. Whatever is coming, whatever storm is gathering beyond these windows and behind these careful smiles, I won't miss it. I can't afford to. Not anymore. The sound of my father's voice carries down the mahogany-paneled hallway like distant thunder, deep and authoritative even when discussing mundane foundation business. Through the half-open door of his study, I catch fragments of conversation punctuated by the scratch of a fountain pen on paper, a sound that has provided the soundtrack to my childhood, like a metronome keeping time to the rhythm of Harrington ambition. Hi-go! A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The Maritime Scholarship Fund needs restructuring, he's saying to someone on the phone, his tone carrying the weight of inherited responsibility. We can't have our name attached to anything less than excellence. Excellence. The word hangs in the air like incense in a cathedral, sacred and suffocating. In the Harrington household, excellence isn't just expected. It's the currency by which love is measured, respect is earned, and family position is determined. I've watched 3 generations navigate these waters, some swimming confidently in the spotlight, while others tread water in the shadows. Maria appears in the doorway carrying a silver tray laden with delicate china cups and what I recognize as my mother's best Darjeeling tea service. The cups are paper-thin porcelain painted with tiny blue forget-me-nots, part of a set that has graced Harrington tables for 60 years. Each piece is irreplaceable, like the traditions they serve. "Your sister just pulled up," Maria murmurs to me as she passes, her voice carrying a warmth that contrasts sharply with the formal chill of the approaching gathering. She has someone with her. Through the lace curtains of the morning room window, I watch a sleek black Mercedes come to a stop at the curb. The car is pristine, its surface reflecting the overcast sky like dark water. Stephanie emerges from the driver's side, her movements precise and confident, every gesture speaking of someone who has never doubted her place in the world. She's wearing a charcoal wool coat that probably cost more than most people's cars, her auburn hair styled in a perfect chignon that doesn't dare move despite the October wind. But it's her passenger who captures my attention. A tall man in naval dress steps out of the car, his uniform crisp and adorned with ribbons that catch the pale sunlight like captured rainbows. Even from this distance, his bearing speaks of command, of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. He moves with the fluid precision of a predator, each step measured and purposeful. My mother rises from her chair, smoothing her skirt with hands that tremble slightly with excitement. "Oh my," she breathes, pressing her palm to her heart. "Victoria, did you know Stephanie was bringing someone in uniform?" The question carries layers of meaning I'm only beginning to understand. In the Harrington family mythology, military service occupies a complicated space, respected for its tradition and hierarchy, but viewed as somehow lesser than the civilian achievements that build dynasties and endowments. My great-grandfather's naval service is celebrated in oil paintings and bronze plaques, but that was different. Wartime service, heroic and temporary, a stepping stone to the business empire he built afterward. No, I reply, watching Stephanie laugh at something her companion says. Even her laughter is perfect, melodic without being girlish, confident without being brash. I had no idea. The front door opens with a flourish, and Stephanie's voice fills the foyer like champagne bubbles rising to the surface. "Mother, we're here! And I have the most wonderful news." The sound of her heels on marble creates a staccato rhythm that announces triumph. I know that rhythm. It's the same one she used when she made law review, when she passed the bar exam with the highest score in the state, when she was featured on the cover of Boston Legal magazine as one of the city's rising stars. It's the sound of someone who collects victories, like other people collect stamps. My father emerges from his study, straightening his tie and putting on the expression he reserves for occasions that might enhance the family reputation. James Harrington at 68 is still an imposing man, his silver hair perfectly styled, his tailored suit speaking of old money and older values. He moves through the world with the unshakable confidence of someone who has never been wrong about anything that mattered. "Stephanie, darling," he says, opening his arms to receive her kiss on his cheek. "You look radiant. And who is this distinguished gentleman?" The man in uniform steps forward, and I can see him clearly now. He's perhaps 40, with steel-gray eyes and the kind of weathered face that speaks of time spent in places where comfort is a luxury. A scar runs along his left temple, barely visible but unmistakably there, like a signature written in flesh. When he speaks, his voice carries the crisp authority of someone accustomed to life-and-death decisions. "Commander Michael Harrison, sir," he says, extending his hand to my father. "Thank you for welcoming me into your home." My father's face lights up with the particular glow he reserves for meeting someone whose achievements he can immediately categorize and appreciate. "Commander! What an honor! Please, please come in. We were just about to have tea." As they move into the morning room, I find myself studying the dynamics unfolding before me. Stephanie positions herself slightly behind Commander Harrison, her hand resting lightly on his arm in a gesture that speaks of possession as much as affection. My mother flutters around them like a moth drawn to flame, her voice pitched higher than usual as she fusses over seating arrangements and refreshments. "Commander Harrison has just returned from a deployment in the Pacific," Stephanie announces, settling into the chair that catches the best light from the window. "He's been leading some very important missions." The way she says important missions makes it clear that she considers herself an expert on military significance, despite having never served a day in uniform. But that's always been Stephanie's gift. The ability to absorb and reflect the achievements of others until they seem to enhance her own glow. Commander Harrison accepts a cup of tea with the same precision he probably uses to handle weapons or navigate treacherous waters. "It's been an honor to serve," he says simply, his words carrying a weight that makes my father lean forward with interest. "What kind of missions, if you don't mind my asking?" my father inquires, his tone suggesting that he very much does mind not knowing every detail immediately. "I'm afraid most of the specifics are classified, sir," Harrison replies smoothly. "But I can say that we've been working to ensure maritime security in some challenging regions." The word classified seems to electrify the room. My mother's eyes widen slightly, and she exchanges a meaningful glance with my father. In their world, secrets are currency, and the suggestion that this man deals in mysteries too important for civilian understanding elevates him immediately in their estimation. "How fascinating," my mother murmurs, her voice carrying the breathless quality she usually reserves for gossip about European royalty. "And how did you and Stephanie meet?" Stephanie's smile could power the harbor lighthouse. "At the Admiral's reception last month," she says, the words dropping like pearls into still water. "Michael was being honored for his service, and I was there representing the firm's maritime law division." The Admiral's reception. I know the event. An annual gathering of Boston's military and maritime elite, the kind of affair that appears in the society pages and serves as a networking opportunity disguised as patriotic celebration. It's exactly the sort of function where Stephanie would shine, where her beauty and intelligence and family connections would open doors, and create opportunities. It was fate, she continues, reaching over to squeeze Harrison's hand. Michael was the most distinguished man in the room, and I was completely captivated by his stories. I watched this performance from my chair by the window, feeling like an anthropologist studying an unfamiliar tribe. The ritual is familiar, the careful display of achievement, the strategic positioning, the subtle competition for attention and approval. But there's something else happening here, something that makes the air feel charged with potential energy. Commander Harrison's eyes sweep the room, taking in the details with the systematic thoroughness of someone trained to assess environments quickly and accurately. When his gaze briefly meets mine, I feel a momentary jolt of recognition, as if he's seeing something in me that the others miss. But the moment passes so quickly I might have imagined it. Victoria works in consulting, my mother says, the pause before consulting heavy with unspoken disappointment. It's the explanation she's settled on for my mysterious career, a catch-all term that sounds respectable enough for dinner party conversations while revealing nothing of substance. What kind of consulting? Harrison asks, his tone politely interested but somehow more focused than mere social courtesy would require. The question hangs in the air like a challenge. I can feel my family's attention shift toward me, waiting for the usual vague response that will allow the conversation to move back to more comfortable territory. They've learned not to press for details about my work, partly from lack of genuine interest, and partly from an instinctive understanding that the answers might complicate their preferred narrative. Strategic planning, I reply carefully, the words true but incomplete. I help organizations navigate complex operational challenges. It's the same non-answer I've been giving for years, polished smooth by repetition. But something in Harrison's expression suggests that he hears the spaces between my words, recognizes the careful editing that shapes my response. That sounds quite demanding, he says, his steel-gray eyes holding mine for a moment longer than social convention dictates. The kind of work that requires a particular skill set. Before I can respond, Stephanie laughs, a sound like silver bells that redirects attention back to her. Victoria has always been the mysterious one in the family, she says with fond condescension. While I was building my legal career, she was off doing, well, whatever it is she does. The dismissal is delivered with such practiced charm that it almost sounds like affection. This is Stephanie's particular talent. The ability to diminish others while appearing generous, to claim the spotlight while seeming to share it. It's a skill that has served her well in boardrooms and social gatherings, where the ability to appear collaborative while remaining competitive determines who rises and who fades into the background. My father nods approvingly, as if Stephanie's explanation has cleared up any confusion about the family hierarchy. Victoria has always marched to her own drummer, he says with the indulgent tone reserved for discussing eccentric relatives. We've learned to accept her unconventional choices. The word accept lands like a stone in still water, sending ripples of meaning through the room. In Harrington family language, acceptance is not approval, it's resignation, a diplomatic way of acknowledging failure while maintaining the fiction of family unity. Commander Harrison's expression remains neutral, but I catch something flickering behind his eyes, a recognition perhaps, or a question forming. He sets down his teacup with the same precision he brought to accepting it, and for a moment the only sound in the room is the faint whisper of October wind against the windows. Outside, the afternoon light is beginning to fade, casting longer shadows across the garden where my mother's dormant roses wait for spring. Inside, the careful choreography of family dynamics continues, each player knowing their role, each line rehearsed through years of similar gatherings. But something feels different today, as if the arrival of this uniformed stranger has introduced an element that doesn't quite fit the established patterns. I sip my tea and watch the performance unfold, aware that I'm both participant and observer, both insider and outsider in this carefully constructed world. The porcelain cup feels fragile in my hands, delicate as the family myths that surround us, and I find myself wondering, what would happen if something or someone finally applied enough pressure to shatter the beautiful, brittle surface of our collective pretense? The memory surfaces without warning as I watch Stephanie arrange herself perfectly in the afternoon light. A summer evening 23 years ago when we were 12 and 14, sprawled across the wooden dock behind our family's cottage on Lake Winnipesaukee. The air smelled of pine needles and sunscreen, and fireflies were just beginning to blink their Morse code messages across the darkening water. Stephanie had been reading aloud from a magazine article about the first female graduates of the Naval Academy, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when discussing anything that might enhance her future resume. Even then, she collected achievements like other children collected baseball cards, studying them with the intensity of a general planning a campaign. "Can you imagine," she had said, looking up from the glossy pages, "all those men having to salute a woman? It's revolutionary." I had been lying on my stomach, chin propped in my hands, watching a family of loons glide across the lake's mirror surface. Their movements were silent and graceful above water, but I knew that beneath the surface their feet were paddling furiously, working twice as hard as what showed to the world. "I think it would be lonely," I had murmured, more to the loons than to Stephanie, being the only one, having to prove yourself every single day. Stephanie had laughed, that bright, dismissive sound that would become her signature. "That's the difference between us, Vicky. You see obstacles, I see opportunities. You worry about fitting in, I plan to stand out." She had been right, of course. Even at 14, Stephanie possessed the kind of crystalline certainty about her path that I envied and feared in equal measure. She knew exactly what she wanted and exactly how to get it: law school, prestigious firm, influential marriage, social prominence. Her life unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance, each step leading inevitably to the next. My own path had been different from the beginning. Where Stephanie collected academic honors and social connections, I found myself drawn to the spaces between things, the quiet corners where real work happened away from spotlights and award ceremonies. In high school, while she was student council president and valedictorian, I was volunteering at the Veterans Hospital, sitting with men who had stories they couldn't tell and wounds that didn't show on X-rays. Victoria was always the sensitive one, my mother would explain to friends who asked about her quieter daughter. The word sensitive in Patricia Harrington's vocabulary wasn't quite an insult, but it carried the subtle implication of weakness, of someone too fragile for the serious business of success. What they never understood was that my sensitivity wasn't weakness, it was reconnaissance. I learned early to read the spaces between words, to hear what people weren't saying, to notice the tremor in a voice or the shadow behind a smile. These skills served me well in college, where I gravitated toward international relations and strategic studies, fields that valued the ability to see patterns others missed. Professor Sarah Chen had been the first person to recognize what I was really capable of. A former Defense Department analyst turned academic, she had pulled me aside after a seminar on maritime security and asked if I had ever considered government service. Her office was cramped and cluttered with classified reports and maritime charts, walls covered with photos of ships and naval installations that most people would never see. "You have an unusual mind," she had told me, her fingers drumming against a stack of papers marked with security classifications. "You see connections that others miss. Ask questions that cut straight to the heart of complex problems. That's a rare gift, especially in someone your age." The conversation that followed changed everything. Professor Chen spoke of opportunities in naval intelligence, of work that mattered more than headlines or recognition, of service that required sacrificing credit for the sake of mission success. It was the opposite of everything my family valued, and perhaps that's what made it irresistible. My parents had been mystified when I announced my intention to pursue graduate work in international security studies at Georgetown instead of following Stephanie to Harvard Law. The decision sparked the first real argument we'd ever had as a family, my father's voice echoing through the Beacon Hill townhouse as he demanded to know what possible career could justify such an unconventional choice. "Intelligence work," I had said simply, the words hanging in the morning room air like a foreign language none of them recognized. My mother had gone pale, immediately imagining scenarios from spy novels and Hollywood thrillers. "Victoria, darling, that sounds so dangerous and secretive. How would we ever explain it to people?" The question revealed everything about the gulf between us. For my mother, a career that couldn't be easily explained at dinner parties was by definition a career not worth having. Success in the Harrington universe required witnesses, applause, social media posts that tagged influential friends and family members. But I had already tasted something different during my summer internship at the Naval War College in Newport. The work was classified, my specific role buried in bureaucratic language that revealed nothing to curious family members. But for the first time in my life, I felt the electric thrill of work that mattered. I spent my days analyzing shipping patterns and port security, tracking the movement of vessels through international waters, identifying threats that most people never imagined. The other interns were a different breed from my college classmates, serious young men and women who spoke in careful sentences and carried themselves with the quiet confidence of people who held secrets. They came from military families, from backgrounds where service was understood and honored, where sacrifice for the greater good wasn't a foreign concept. Among them was Lieutenant Jessica Morrison, a Naval Academy graduate who became my first real mentor in the intelligence community. She was compact and fierce, with dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw, and a laugh that could cut through the tension of even the most stressful briefing. Jessica had grown up in a Navy family, moved 17 times before graduating high school, and spoke about duty the way my family spoke about dividends. The thing about intelligence work, she had told me during one of our late-night sessions in the secure facility, is that success is measured in crises that never happen, in disasters that are prevented before anyone knows they were possible. Your family will never understand what you do because the best intelligence work is invisible. She had been right. The deeper I moved into the world of naval intelligence, the wider the chasm grew between my professional life and my family's understanding. My graduate studies led to a position with the Office of Naval Intelligence, where I specialized in maritime threat assessment and port security analysis. The work was challenging and vital, requiring me to think 3 steps ahead of adversaries who were constantly evolving their tactics. But when I tried to explain any of this to my family, their eyes would glaze over with polite incomprehension. During holiday gatherings, while Stephanie regaled the table with stories of high-profile cases and courtroom victories, I would sit silently, unable to share the details of operations that had prevented terrorist attacks or disrupted trafficking networks. My successes were classified, my failures invisible, my entire professional existence reduced to the vague category of consulting work. The years blurred together in a stream of 18-hour days and overseas deployments, briefing rooms and situation centers, late-night phone calls about emerging threats, and early morning flights to crisis zones. I learned to sleep on transport planes and live out of go bags, to think in multiple time zones, and communicate in careful euphemisms that revealed nothing to outside listeners. My first major operation came 3 years after joining ONI, when intelligence indicated a significant security threat to commercial shipping in the Gulf of Aden. I was part of a joint task force that included representatives from multiple agencies, working around the clock to coordinate a response that would protect American interests without escalating regional tensions. For 6 weeks, I lived in a windowless command center, analyzing satellite data and communication intercepts, building the intelligence picture that would guide naval operations in one of the world's most dangerous waterways. The operation was a complete success. No attacks occurred. No American vessels were lost. No international incidents erupted from our response. But success in the intelligence world means that nobody outside the classified community ever knows your name. There were no newspaper articles, no television interviews, no prestigious awards that could be displayed in the family trophy case. When I returned to Boston for Thanksgiving that year, still carrying the exhaustion of 6 weeks in crisis mode, my father asked if I was still doing that computer consulting work. The question hit me like a physical blow, the casual dismissal of work that had quite literally prevented loss of life and protected national interests. That was the night I stopped trying to explain. Sitting in the same morning room where I now watch Commander Harrison assess my family's dynamics, I had made the decision to let them believe whatever narrative made them comfortable. If they needed to see me as the family disappointment, the daughter who had chosen mystery over prestige, then that would have to be enough. The irony wasn't lost on me. As Stephanie built her reputation in maritime law, arguing cases in climate-controlled courtrooms and attending receptions where the most dangerous thing was social embarrassment, I was working to protect the very shipping lanes and ports that generated her clients' wealth. The threats I analyzed in classified briefings were the same piracy and terrorism risks that drove demand for her legal expertise. But the two worlds never intersected in ways that my family could understand. Stephanie's victories were public and celebrated. Mine were buried in classification levels that would remain secret for decades. She had chosen the spotlight, and I had chosen the shadows, never imagining that those parallel paths might someday converge in a way that would shatter every assumption my family had carefully constructed about success, service, and the true meaning of sacrifice. The grandfather clock in the corner chimes 4 o'clock, its bronze pendulum catching the fading afternoon light as it marks another hour in what feels like the longest day of my life. Commander Harrison has been with us for 90 minutes now, and I've watched him navigate my family's social currents with the same careful precision he probably uses to chart dangerous waters. He asks the right questions, laughs at my father's stories, compliments my mother's tea service, all while his steel-gray eyes catalog details that escape everyone else's notice. Stephanie rises from her chair with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to commanding attention, smoothing her skirt as she moves toward the antique sideboard, where family photographs create a carefully curated museum of Harrington achievements. "Michael, you simply must see these," she says, her voice carrying that particular breathless quality she uses when showcasing the family legacy. "This is where we keep our proudest moments." She lifts a silver-framed photograph of our great-grandfather in his World War II naval uniform, the same image that hangs in the hallway but in a more intimate size for closer inspection. "Admiral Cornelius Harrington," she announces, with the reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. "He commanded a destroyer squadron in the Pacific Theater. Daddy always says military service runs in our blood." The irony of her words isn't lost on me. Military service runs in our blood, but only the kind that comes with gold braid and newspaper headlines, the kind that translates easily into boardroom credibility and country club conversations. The everyday service, the unglamorous work of keeping the world safe while others sleep peacefully in their beds, that kind of service has never rated a silver frame in the Harrington collection. Commander Harrison accepts the photograph with appropriate reverence, studying the image with the professional interest of someone who understands the weight of command at sea. "Impressive," he says, his voice carrying genuine respect. "Destroyer squadrons faced some of the heaviest action in the Pacific. Your great-grandfather must have been a remarkable leader." My father practically glows with reflected pride, launching into a well-rehearsed recitation of family maritime history that traces our connection to the sea back 3 generations. He speaks of shipping fortunes and naval traditions, of men who built empires on the bones of wooden ships and the sweat of immigrant dock workers. It's a compelling narrative, polished through countless tellings at dinner parties and charity galas. What the story carefully omits is the darker truth that family money came from war profiteering as much as heroic service, that great-grandfather's naval career was as much about protecting Harrington financial interests as defending American freedoms. But these are complexities that don't fit the family mythology, uncomfortable realities that have been edited out through decades of selective memory. I listen to the familiar recitation while watching Commander Harrison's face for any sign of judgment or recognition. His expression remains professionally neutral, but something in his posture suggests he's hearing more than just the words, processing the spaces between facts and the careful construction of our family's public image. "And what about the current generation?" he asks, his gaze shifting between Stephanie and me. "Are either of you continuing the family tradition of service?" The question hangs in the air like a depth charge, waiting to explode. Stephanie's laugh tinkles like breaking crystal as she waves a dismissive hand toward the photographs. "Oh, we've found other ways to serve," she says with practiced modesty. "I handle maritime law for some very important shipping companies, making sure commerce flows smoothly through international waters. It's not as glamorous as naval command, but it's essential work." She moves closer to Harrison as she speaks, her hand finding his arm in a gesture that manages to be both possessive and supportive. "Michael understands how vital civilian maritime professionals are to national security, don't you, darling?" The endearment drops between them like a stone into still water, creating ripples that spread throughout the room. My mother's face lights up with the particular glow she reserves for moments when family prestige is being enhanced in real time. My father nods approvingly, already calculating the social advantages of having a decorated naval officer in the family orbit. But it's the way Harrison's eyes flick briefly toward me that sends electricity down my spine. For just a moment, his professional mask slips, revealing something that might be amusement or recognition or perhaps something more complex. The look is gone so quickly I might have imagined it, but the afterimage burns in my retinas like staring too long at the sun. Indeed, he says smoothly, his attention returning to Stephanie. Civilian expertise is crucial to maintaining maritime security. The relationship between military operations and commercial shipping requires careful coordination. The words are diplomatic and appropriate, but I catch an undertone that suggests deeper knowledge than casual observation would provide. Commander Harrison speaks about civilian-military coordination with the familiarity of someone who has lived that intersection, who understands the delicate balance between protecting commerce and maintaining operational security. My phone buzzes against my thigh, a subtle vibration that I initially ignore. But when it buzzes again, then a third time in rapid succession, I excuse myself and slip the device from my pocket. The screen shows 3 text messages from a number I recognize immediately. My handler at the Pentagon, a woman who contacts me only when situations require immediate attention. The first message is innocuous enough. Please confirm your availability for tomorrow's briefing. But the second makes my pulse quicken. Situation developing. May need early departure from family obligations. The third message stops my heart entirely. Commander Harrison cleared for direct contact. Proceed with caution. My hands don't shake as I slide the phone back into my pocket, but only because years of training have taught me to maintain physical control even when my world tilts on its axis. Commander Harrison cleared for direct contact. The words rearranged themselves in my mind, each letter weighted with implications that I'm only beginning to understand. The conversation continues around me, but it feels distant now, like voices heard underwater. Stephanie is showing Harrison another photograph, this one of herself at her law school graduation, her smile radiant beneath a mortarboard that catches the camera flash like a halo. My parents hover at the edges of the tableau, basking in reflected achievement the way plants turn toward sunlight. But Harrison's attention keeps drifting. I catch him glancing toward the window, where shadows are lengthening across the garden, checking his watch with the subtle urgency of someone operating on a timeline that others can't see. When he thinks no one is looking, his gaze finds me, and this time the look lingers long enough that I can't dismiss it as coincidence. Victoria, my mother says suddenly, her voice cutting through my distraction, Commander Harrison was just asking about your work. I told him you do some sort of strategic consulting. The words hit me like cold water, snapping my attention back to the room where 4 pairs of eyes are focused on me with varying degrees of interest and expectation. Stephanie's expression carries a hint of challenge, as if she's testing whether I'll finally admit to the unremarkable nature of my career. My parents watch with the polite attention they reserve for topics that don't really interest them, but must be endured for the sake of social completion. But it's Harrison's gaze that holds me, steady and knowing, like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. In his eyes, I see recognition of something my family has never bothered to look for, acknowledgement of depths they've never thought to plumb. The silence stretches between us, pregnant with possibilities that neither of us can voice in present company. Strategic consulting covers a lot of ground, I say carefully, the words emerging from years of practice, in revealing nothing while appearing cooperative. I help organizations navigate complex operational challenges, particularly in international contexts. It's the same non-answer I've been giving for years, polished to a shine through repetition. But this time, something in Harrison's expression suggests he hears the careful precision of my evasion, recognizes the professional training that shapes my response. That sounds fascinating, he says, his tone carrying just enough interest to seem polite without being intrusive. International work must require significant travel. The observation is casual, conversational, but it lands with the weight of someone who understands what international travel really means in certain contexts. I feel the familiar tightness in my chest that comes from walking the razor's edge between truth and necessary deception. the constant tension of living multiple lives in the same body. Occasionally, I reply, matching his careful tone, though much of the work can be done remotely these days. It's a lie and a truth simultaneously, the kind of answer that intelligence work teaches you to craft when surrounded by people who lack the security clearance to hear the full story. But for the first time in years, I'm speaking to someone who might understand the weight of classified burdens, who might recognize the isolation that comes from carrying secrets that shape the world in ways that can never be acknowledged publicly. The afternoon light continues to fade outside the windows, casting longer shadows across the Persian rugs and polished hardwood floors. Soon it will be time for dinner, for the extended family gathering that my mother has been planning for weeks. More relatives will arrive, more questions will be asked, more careful performances will be required. But something has shifted in the room's atmosphere, an almost imperceptible change in pressure that speaks of storms approaching beyond the horizon. I can feel it in the way Harrison's attention keeps returning to me, despite Stephanie's best efforts to maintain his focus, in the weight of unspoken knowledge that presses against the boundaries of our careful conversation. The grandfather clock chimes the half hour, its bronze voice marking time in a room where past, present, and future are beginning to converge in ways that none of us fully understand yet. Outside, the October wind picks up, rattling the windows with increasing urgency, as if the weather itself senses that change is coming whether we're ready for it or not. The dining room has been transformed into a theater of family ambition, the mahogany table gleaming under the crystal chandelier, like a stage set for the evening's performance. Maria has outdone herself with the presentation: bone china that belonged to my great-grandmother, silver that requires weekly polishing, crystal glasses that catch the candlelight and throw rainbows across the cream-colored walls. Each place setting is a work of art, arranged with the precision of someone who understands that in the Harrington household, presentation is everything. Extended family members have begun arriving for what my mother calls our little celebration, though the scale of preparation suggests something far more significant than she's willing to admit. Uncle Robert, my father's younger brother and the family's designated rebel, enters with his usual theatrical flair, his silver hair slightly disheveled, and his tie askew in a way that suggests either carelessness or careful calculation. Behind him follows his wife Diane, elegant and sharp-eyed, carrying herself with the confidence of a woman who married into the family but never fully surrendered to its expectations. "Victoria!" Uncle Robert booms, crossing the room to envelop me in an embrace that smells of expensive cologne and good whiskey. "Look at you, mysterious as ever. Still keeping us all guessing about what you actually do for a living?" His question carries genuine affection rather than judgment, but it lands in the room like a stone thrown into still water. The ripples spread outward, touching every conversation and causing heads to turn in our direction. Uncle Robert has always been the family member most willing to ask uncomfortable questions, to poke at the carefully maintained facade that keeps our collective mythology intact. "Strategic consulting," I reply with practiced ease, but Uncle Robert's laugh suggests he finds the answer as unsatisfying as everyone else does. "Ah, yes, the mysterious consulting," he says, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "The kind that requires security clearances and international travel to places you can't name." How terribly cloak and dagger of you. The observation hits closer to the truth than my uncle realizes. But before I can respond, Stephanie appears at my elbow, her arm sliding through mine with the possessive grace of someone reclaiming territory. "Uncle Robert, you must meet Michael," she says, her voice carrying that particular breathless quality that signals important news approaching. "He's the most remarkable man." Commander Harrison materializes beside us as if summoned, his dress uniform crisp and imposing in the candlelit dining room. The transformation from afternoon tea guest to evening dinner companion has somehow made him more formidable, his ribbons and insignia catching the light like captured stars. He moves with the fluid confidence of someone accustomed to command, each gesture economical and purposeful. "Commander Michael Harrison," he says, extending his hand to Uncle Robert with military precision. "It's an honor to meet you, sir." Uncle Robert's handshake is firm, his journalist's instincts clearly engaged as he studies Harrison's face and bearing. "Robert Harrington, Boston Globe." Though I'm officially retired from asking uncomfortable questions. His smile suggests the retirement might be more theoretical than practical. What brings you to our little family gathering, Commander? The question hangs in the air with deceptive casualness. Uncle Robert has spent 40 years as an investigative reporter, and his ability to extract information through seemingly innocent conversation is legendary in family circles. I watch Harrison process the challenge, his expression revealing nothing while his mind clearly calculates the appropriate response. Stephanie has been kind enough to introduce me to your family, Harrison replies smoothly. I'm finding the evening quite educational. The word educational carries undertones that make my pulse quicken. There's something in the way he says it, a weight that suggests learning extends beyond social pleasantries and family histories. I catch him glancing toward me as he speaks, a look so brief it might be unconscious, but feels anything but accidental. My father calls for attention, with the subtle authority that has commanded boardrooms and charity committees for 3 decades. Before we sit down to dinner, he announces, his voice carrying easily across the room, I believe we have some news to share. The words create an immediate hush, conversation stopping mid-sentence, as all attention focuses on the head of the table where my father stands, with the bearing of a judge preparing to render a verdict. My mother rises beside him, her pearls catching the candlelight as she clasps her hands with poorly concealed excitement. Stephanie moves to the center of the room, pulling Harrison with her, their positioning clearly choreographed for maximum impact. She glows with the particular radiance of someone about to claim the spotlight she's always believed belongs to her by right. Harrison follows her lead but maintains the controlled bearing of someone accustomed to ceremonies with higher stakes than family announcements. Michael and I have an announcement, Stephanie begins, her voice carrying easily across the suddenly silent room. We're engaged. The words detonate like celebration fireworks, filling the dining room with exclamations of joy and surprise. My mother actually claps her hands together, her face lighting up with the particular glow she reserves for moments when family prestige receives significant enhancement. My father beams with the satisfaction of a man watching his investments pay dividends. Uncle Robert raises his whiskey glass in an impromptu toast. Congratulations to both of you. Stephanie, you've captured yourself as a genuine hero. The word hero ricochets around the room, gaining momentum with each repetition. Cousins and aunts surge forward to examine Stephanie's ring, a substantial diamond that catches the chandelier light like trapped lightning. The men gravitate toward Harrison, drawn by the magnetic pull of military achievement and the promise of stories that might involve actual danger. But as the celebration swirls around me, I find myself studying Harrison's face for any sign of the man I glimpsed during our afternoon conversations. His expression is appropriately pleased, his responses to congratulations perfectly calibrated for the occasion. Yet something in his posture suggests he's performing a role rather than experiencing spontaneous joy. Victoria, isn't it wonderful? My mother gushes, appearing at my side with champagne flutes that sparkle like liquid stars. A naval officer in the family. Your great-grandfather would be so proud. I accept the champagne with appropriate enthusiasm, but the irony of her words tastes bitter in my mouth. A naval officer in the family would indeed make my great-grandfather proud. But my mother's excitement stems from the visible, socially advantageous kind of naval service, the kind that comes with formal uniforms and public ceremonies, not the shadowy work that actually keeps the world safe. The dinner bell chimes with silver clarity, and we move toward the table in a carefully orchestrated procession. Place cards direct us to seats that reflect family hierarchy and social positioning. My parents at the head and foot of the table, Stephanie and Harrison in places of honor to their right, extended family members arranged in descending order of importance. I find myself seated between Uncle Robert and Cousin Margaret, far enough from the center of attention to observe without being expected to contribute significantly to the conversation. The first course arrives with Maria's usual impeccable timing. Butternut squash soup garnished with herbs from my mother's garden, served in bowls that have graced family celebrations for 3 generations. Conversation flows like wine, moving from engagement details to wedding plans to speculation about Harrison's military career. What's your specialty, Commander? Uncle Robert asks between spoonfuls of soup, his reporter's instincts clearly engaged despite his claimed retirement. I imagine your recent deployment involved some interesting challenges. Harrison's spoon pauses halfway to his lips, a momentary hesitation so brief it might escape casual notice. Maritime security operations, he replies carefully. Protecting commercial shipping lanes and ensuring safe passage for international commerce. It's a diplomatic answer that reveals nothing while sounding substantial, the kind of response that intelligence training teaches you to deliver when discussing classified operations in mixed company. But something in the way he speaks the words makes my breath catch in my throat. That must require coordination with civilian agencies, I hear myself saying, the words emerging before conscious thought can stop them. Particularly when dealing with threats that cross multiple jurisdictions. The observation falls into the conversation like a stone into still water, creating ripples that spread outward in ways I hadn't anticipated. Harrison's eyes snap to mine across the table, his professional mask slipping for just an instant to reveal something that might be surprise or recognition, or perhaps both. Indeed, he says slowly, his gaze holding mine with the weight of unspoken knowledge. Effective maritime security requires seamless integration between military operations and civilian intelligence assets. The challenges are significant. The word assets hangs between us like a bridge neither of us is quite ready to cross. In intelligence parlance, assets are human resources. People who provide information, analysis, or operational support in service of larger missions. The term is clinical, professional, but in this context it carries implications that make my pulse quicken. Uncle Robert's eyes dart between us, his journalist's instincts clearly detecting undercurrents that escape the rest of the table. Victoria, didn't you mention that your consulting work involves international security issues? Perhaps you and the commander have more in common than we realized. The suggestion lands like a challenge, forcing both Harrison and me to navigate treacherous conversational waters, while maintaining the careful facades that protect our professional lives. I feel the weight of every eye at the table, family members suddenly paying attention to a dynamic they hadn't previously noticed. I work primarily in threat assessment, I say carefully, each word chosen with surgical precision, analyzing patterns and identifying potential risks before they become actual problems. It's the truth stripped of all classification markings, sanitized for civilian consumption but accurate in its essential details. Harrison nods slowly, his expression neutral but his eyes alive with an intensity that suggests he's hearing far more than my words are actually saying. Threat assessment is crucial to operational success, he agrees, his tone matching mine in its careful neutrality. The ability to anticipate problems before they manifest often determines the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. We're speaking in code now, using the sanitized language that intelligence professionals employ when discussing classified operations in the presence of those who lack appropriate clearances. But beneath the diplomatic phrases, I sense a conversation happening on frequencies that only we can hear. Stephanie's laugh cuts through the tension like a blade, her voice carrying the brittle edge of someone who realizes she's lost control of her own narrative. "How fascinating that you two found something in common," she says, her tone suggesting it's anything but fascinating. Though I imagine Michael's actual combat experience trumps theoretical analysis. The dismissal is delivered with practiced charm, but it carries the sharp edge of territorial defense. Stephanie has built her evening around being the bridge between Harrison's military achievements and our family's civilian success, and she's not about to let her role be diminished by unexpected connections. But as Harrison's eyes meet mine across the candlelit table, I sense that the evening's carefully scripted performance is about to take a turn that none of us, least of all Stephanie, could have anticipated. "Actually," Harrison says slowly, his voice carrying a new weight that makes everyone at the table lean forward slightly, "I believe Miss Harrington Blake's work might be more hands-on than anyone realizes." The words fall into the dining room's silence like depth charges, their meaning unclear but their impact immediate. I feel the familiar tightness in my chest that comes from standing at the edge of exposure, the moment when years of careful secrecy balance on the knife's edge of revelation. And in that crystalline instant, with my family's confused faces reflecting the candlelight like masks waiting to be removed, I realize that Commander Harrison knows exactly who I am. The silence that follows Harrison's words stretches like a taut wire, vibrating with unspoken tension that threatens to snap at any moment. Crystal glasses pause halfway to lips, silver forks hover suspended above untouched plates, and 18 pairs of eyes shift between Harrison and me like spectators at a tennis match who can't quite follow the ball. My father clears his throat with the authority of someone accustomed to controlling conversations that venture into uncomfortable territory. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Commander," he says, his tone carrying the polite confusion of a man who suspects he's missing something important but lacks the vocabulary to ask the right questions. Harrison sets down his water glass with deliberate precision, the crystal base touching the mahogany table with a sound that seems unnaturally loud in the hushed dining room. When he speaks, his voice carries the measured cadence of someone accustomed to delivering briefings that change the course of operations. "What I mean, sir, is that your daughter's work in strategic consulting involves considerably more than civilian threat assessment." He pauses, allowing the words to settle like sediment in still water. Miss Harrington Blake serves as a senior maritime intelligence analyst with the Office of Naval Intelligence, where she holds the civilian equivalent rank of Admiral. The words detonate like a controlled explosion, each syllable reshaping the landscape of everything my family thought they knew about me. The impact ripples outward in waves. First shock, then confusion, then a desperate scramble to reconcile this new information with decades of carefully constructed assumptions. Taco. My mother's champagne flute slips from nerveless fingers, the crystal shattering against her dinner plate in a cascade of sparkling fragments that catches the candlelight like fallen stars. The sound seems to break the spell that has held the room frozen, releasing a flood of reactions that crashes over the table like a breaking wave. "That's impossible," Stephanie breathes, her voice barely above a whisper. Her face has gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup, her eyes wide, with the particular shock of someone whose entire worldview has just been turned inside out. "Victoria works in consulting. She's never been in the military." Harrison's gaze remains steady, professional, carrying the weight of someone who delivers classified briefings to skeptical audiences as a matter of routine. "Civilian intelligence analysts don't require military service, Ms. Harrington. They do, however, require security clearances that place their work under strict classification protocols." Uncle Robert leans forward, his journalist's instincts fully engaged, despite his claimed retirement. "Are you saying that Victoria has been involved in actual intelligence operations? Not just analysis, but active fieldwork?" The question hangs in the air like incense, heavy with implications that no one at the table is quite prepared to process. I feel the weight of every stare, the pressure of revelations that can't be taken back once spoken, years of careful secrecy, of protecting my family from the dangerous realities of my professional life, stand balanced on the knife's edge of Harrison's next words. "Miss Harrington Blake has spent the last 8 years coordinating maritime security operations across 3 oceans," Harrison says, his voice carrying the formal precision of an official commendation. "Her intelligence assessments have prevented terrorist attacks on commercial shipping, disrupted international smuggling networks, and saved countless civilian lives." The words fall into the room like stones thrown into a deep well, their impact echoing in ways that will take years to fully understand. My father's face cycles through expressions of disbelief, confusion, and something that might be the first stirrings of comprehension. My mother stares at me as if seeing a stranger wearing her daughter's face. "The Operation Neptune shield that prevented the attack on Boston Harbor 2 years ago," Harrison continues, his eyes meeting mine with a respect that I've never seen in this dining room before. "That was Victoria's intelligence work. The disruption of the Syrian trafficking network that was using commercial vessels to transport weapons, also Victoria's analysis and coordination." Each operation he names hits the table like a physical blow. These are events that made headlines, security successes, that were celebrated in classified circles but never attributed to specific individuals in public reporting. My family reads about these victories in sanitized newspaper accounts, never imagining that their disappointing daughter was the architect of operations that shaped international security. Cousin Margaret, a lawyer who specializes in government contracts, speaks first into the stunned silence. The clearance level required for that kind of work, she begins, then trails off as the implications sink in. Victoria, you're talking about top-secret access, compartmentalized intelligence, the kind of clearance that takes years to obtain and requires continuous background investigations. I nod slowly, the simple gesture feeling like crossing a bridge I can never uncross. TS/SCI with special access protocols, I confirm, using the acronyms that have defined my professional life for nearly a decade. My work requires clearance levels that most people never encounter. The technical language lands like a foreign dialect in a room full of people who measure success in terms of public recognition and social advancement. But the gravity in my voice, the weight of years spent protecting secrets that could destabilize governments, finally begins to penetrate the fog of family assumptions. Uncle Robert whistles low, a sound that speaks of impressed recognition. Jesus, Victoria. You've been running intelligence operations while we thought you were filing reports in some anonymous office building. Not running, I correct gently. Analyzing, coordinating, providing strategic assessment that guides operational decisions made by people with considerably more authority than I possess. But Harrison shakes his head, his expression carrying the certainty of someone who has read classified files that my family will never see. Admiral, he says, the title falling between us like a bridge finally built across years of misunderstanding. Ma'am. The formal address hits the dining room like a thunderclap, its impact silencing even the whispered conversations that had begun to spring up around the table's edges. In military protocol, the title Admiral carries weight that transcends rank structure when applied to civilian intelligence leadership. It's a recognition of authority that operates at the highest levels of national security. Stephanie's face crumples, her carefully constructed evening dissolving like sugar in rain. This isn't possible, she repeats, her voice carrying the desperate edge of someone watching her entire identity shift beneath her feet. Victoria she's never accomplished anything that. She can't finish the sentence, can't voice the assumption that has shaped our family dynamics for decades, that success requires visibility, that achievement demands public recognition, that a life lived in shadows can't possibly matter as much as one lived in spotlights. My father's voice, when he finally finds it, carries a tremor I've never heard before. Victoria, is this true? Have we been? He can't complete the question either, but I understand what he's asking. Have you been serving your country while we dismissed your work as meaningless? Have we been blind to achievements that dwarf anything else this family has accomplished? Have we failed you in ways we're only beginning to understand? Yes, Daddy, I say softly, the childhood endearment slipping out unbidden. It's true, all of it. The admission settles over the table like evening fog, obscuring old certainties and revealing landscapes that no one had previously imagined. In the candlelight, surrounded by the detritus of assumptions that lie shattered like my mother's champagne glass, I feel something fundamental shift in the architecture of our family relationships. Harrison reaches into his dress uniform jacket and withdraws a leather portfolio that bears the official seal of the Department of Defense. I was asked to deliver this personally, he says, extending the portfolio toward me with the formality of a military ceremony. Your new assignment comes with a promotion and a commendation that has been years in the making. My hands don't shake as I accept the portfolio, though I can feel the weight of every eye in the room tracking the movement. The leather is warm from being carried close to Harrison's chest, and the seal embossed on its cover catches the candlelight like a promise of futures I hadn't dared to imagine. Inside, printed on heavy paper that bears multiple security classifications, is an appointment letter that makes my breath catch in my throat. The promotion is significant, a move into strategic planning at the highest levels of naval intelligence, with authority over operations that span multiple theaters and countless lives. But it's the commendation that stops my heart entirely. Recognition for 8 years of service that prevented catastrophic attacks, saved civilian lives, and protected American interests in ways that will remain classified for decades. The language is formal, military, but between the official phrases, I can read the truth that my family is only beginning to understand, that their disappointment daughter has been a guardian angel working in shadows they never thought to illuminate. The Secretary of the Navy asked me to convey his personal gratitude, Harrison says, his voice carrying the weight of official recognition. And to inform you that your new position comes with public acknowledgement that has been long overdue. Public acknowledgement. The words hang in the air like a promise of redemption. The possibility that years of invisible service might finally receive the recognition that could bridge the gap between my professional achievements and my family's understanding. Around the table, faces reflect the candlelight like masks being slowly removed. My mother's tears catch the light as they trace paths down her cheeks, each drop carrying years of misplaced disappointment and belated pride. My father stares at the commendation in my hands, as if it might contain answers to questions he never knew he should ask. And Stephanie, beautiful, brilliant Stephanie, watches her younger sister's transformation with eyes that hold a complex mixture of shock, respect, and perhaps the first stirrings of understanding that strength comes in forms she never learned to recognize. In this moment, surrounded by the ruins of old assumptions and the foundation stones of new understanding, I finally allow myself to stand fully in the light of my own achievements, no longer hiding behind modest disclaimers and careful evasions. The woman who walked into this house this morning, hesitant and defensive, feels like a different person entirely. In her place sits someone who has earned the right to claim her space at this table, her voice in this family, her recognition as someone whose service has shaped the world in ways that matter more than any social register or charity gala ever could. And as Harrison raises his water glass in a toast to Admiral Harrington Blake, I realize that some battles are won not through conflict, but through the simple act of finally allowing the truth to speak for itself. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.